On this particular Christmas, my now former in-laws decided to treat the family to a vacation on Vieques, an island off the coast of Puerto Rico. It was a rustic hillside bunkhouse that we stayed in. And it was a week of very mixed emotions. Now, I am normally a person who is very go with the flow, relaxed about things, let things slide, just, observe and live and see where the next thing takes us. And these were all very good skills to have in this family. But on this particular week, I was a piece of work, if I do say so myself. And all of that calmness was right out the door. I could see the bickering between the mother and daughter. There was nobody making a decision about anything when it came to what we were going to do with our days. And it was just grating on my last nerve. And I was very vocal about the irritation that everyone was providing. But every morning, thankfully, for myself and everyone else in the house, I'm sure, I would leave and go down to the ocean that was at the bottom of this hillside. And I would dive into the rolling morning surf. And it was a very strong surf at this point. And I would let that surf take me and roll me, and I could feel the sand scraping against my skin. And in that surf, I felt so calm, and I felt solid and centered, and I felt connected to something so much bigger than myself. And after a bit, I would get out of the surf, and I'd walk to the edge of the coconut palms, and I would vomit violently. And I wanted to blame the copious amounts of rum I was drinking, but I wasn't drinking that much rum. So I'd go back into the water. And at the end of this trip, we spent the last couple nights in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And on the final day, I wanted to get this sandwich. It's called a Mallorca at a place called Cafeteria Mallorca. And it's a ham and cheese sandwich, pressed, toasted, covered in powdered sugar. And it sounded amazing from what I'd read in the magazines. And we got there, and I saw these Mallorcas, about half a tray of them, in the window, and I was thrilled. And we sat down, and we waited for our waiter. And he came, and he took our order very slowly. And he went away, and he returned with coffee, went away, returned with my husband's food, not a Mallorca. No Mallorca for me. I said, excuse me, where's my Mallorca? Oh, no mas. No. This is Cafeteria Mallorca. How can you have no Mallorcas? Now, mind you, usually not a problem. I'd be like, oh, this is the universe's reason for us to come back to San Juan. No problem. I'll get a Mallorca next time. I can't wait to come back. No, not this time. This time, I wanted my Mallorca, and they didn't have any. There were no more. And tears started springing from my eyes. Bing, bing, bing. And my husband, fork halfway to his mouth. When we leave here, he says, we are getting you a pregnancy test. It won't work. They're written in Spanish here. Also very uncharacteristic. So we got the pregnancy test. I peed on the stick. I was barely done peeing, and the plus sign came up. Turns out they're multilingual. And I was so excited. I'd wanted this baby for over 10 years. I felt her spirit with me. I knew that this child was going to be with me. And I was also terrified and so upset because that boy in the next room had never been part of my story of how I would raise a child. I always believed I'd be a solo mom and somehow we'd be in the world together. And I'd never calculated for a partner. And while his family was very solid and his parents were celebrating decades of marriage together, he and I had never discussed how we would raise a child together. And immediately a fully formed plan came into my head that I would tell him that pregnancy test was negative, and then we'd go home and I'd start picking fights and I'd pack my bags and I would leave for the West Coast and I would raise that child by myself and he would never know. That's not what happened, because I realized that boy in the next room was my husband, and we were usually a pretty good team. We'd been a very good team that week now that I was speaking my mind a little bit more. But anyway, I told him, we're pregnant, we're going to be parents, and he was overjoyed. So we fast forward 10 months, because surprise, it really is 10 months, not 9. And we're at a soccer game here in Austin, watching my cousin, who at the time was about 8, play soccer. I was less than thrilled. I actually wanted to be anywhere but that soccer field or surrounded by children, because as a rule, I don't like kids. But this one child that I would soon be birthing, I was very excited to meet. And on that hot afternoon in September, I suddenly got lightheaded, nauseous, and dry-mouthed all at the same time. And I looked at him and I said, I need to go now. And he said, oh my God, the baby, oh my God, the baby's coming, let me get, the baby's coming. And I said, no, the baby is not coming. I need enchiladas. So we went and got enchiladas, full plate, green enchiladas, rice, beans, sweet tea. I ate every single bit and drank 2 teas because baby was hungry. Turns out, baby was fueling up for the long haul. So we get home. I lay on the couch and feeling very achy, but nothing that's contraction-y. And the day wears on, the night wears on. I sleep a bit, and about 2 a.m. I wake up. Oh, that's a contraction. About 10 minutes later, there's another one. About another 10 minutes, there's another contraction. 8 minutes, 6 minutes. Finally, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I call my midwife and I say, Elisa, this is what's been happening. I think it's time. And she says, it's not time. But you're right, that is what's happening, and I'll be there about 8 o'clock. In the meantime, have a glass of wine and try to enjoy the last bit of quiet. I look around my kitchen. We have no wine. That's okay, have a dark beer. We only have Shiner. Katie, drink something, take a bath, and rest. I'll be there at 8. Okay. So she shows up, checks everything. I'm doing fine. The baby's doing fine. Everything's good. I will continue to do fine. The baby will continue to do fine. Everything will be great for the next 2 days. Finally, it's getting into the evening of that second day, And Elisa brings me into my room and says, "We need to talk. You're doing fine, the baby's doing fine, but there's something happening that's keeping you from progressing. Are you worried about anything?" Well, by this time, I've gotten over the whole, how the hell am I going to raise a kid with a partner thing? And so that's not a problem. But it occurs to me that I'm terrified that I'm going to die having this child. And it's not something I voiced to her or anyone else, and really hadn't admitted to myself until that point. And so I tell her, and she puts her arm around me and says, "Everything's going to be okay. You're fine, the baby's fine. You are strong. Women have done this since the beginning of time." And as I'm starting to feel more confident, she says, "And if anything were to change, there's a hospital 5 minutes down the road." At which point, I start crying. I said, "I can't go to a hospital." She says, "What? You're not going to have to, but why can't you go to a hospital?" And I said, "My dad went to a hospital to get a physical, and he had a heart attack, and he died, and I didn't even get to say goodbye. I can't have a baby in a hospital. Hospitals are where people go to die." And she held me, and she said, "Then we won't go to a hospital. You're going to get in that birth pool in a bit, and you're going to have this baby." And so we left, and she asked me a bit later to go outside to go for yet another walk. Do you know how many walks pregnant women take? And the moon is so full, and I'm so pregnant, and I feel that moon, and I feel this energy, and I have 2 contractions getting from my front door to the sidewalk or the street. And she says, "You can come back inside now. It's time to get in the pool." So I somehow managed to get into this birth pool, and I'm having my contractions, and a few pass, and I look up and I say, "Elisa, I know what the ring of fire means now." And she goes one way and her knitting goes the other, and she gets behind me and she says, "Okay, you need to just lean back and I will help with that baby." And I say, "After this next contraction." And the baby comes from my body and flips through and lands in the midwife's arms. And they get me back, and I receive my child. And I look in this baby's eyes, and she looks in mine. And I realize I did die a little bit that night, but I was also reborn into a fierceness that you only know if you know. Thank you.